Good morning. My name is Javier Becerra, Attorney General for the great state of California. I am joined by, I want to say thank you as well to Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond, who's with us. And I'd also like to welcome and thank, and in a moment give a shout out to Angela Norman, who is a special education teacher and a member-elect to the Alameda County Board of Education. And we're going to make sure we finish on time today because she needs to get sworn in. So I want to thank the two of them coming. They will say some remarks after I do. Tony will turn it over to Angela, and Angela will return it to me when she has completed her remarks. I also want to thank all of those of you who are on this call. And can I just give a special shout out to Michigan State Attorney General Dana Nessel, who is collating in the action that we are announcing today. Whether it's wages of our workers, food on the table of our families, or the health of our communities, the Trump administration has this bad habit of ripping off those most in need. And today's announcement is about stopping the Trump administration's latest effort to steal from working families, give it to the very privileged. Today, we're announcing a multi-state lawsuit against Secretary DeVos of the Department of Education and the Trump administration in order to put a halt to their attempt to siphon CARES Act relief funds away from our K-12 public schools. These are funds from Congress that are largely meant to help our neediest schools confront the effects of an ongoing pandemic. And in providing these funds, Congress made it very clear that this money is meant to give states the flexibility to distribute these resources as necessary and not be subjected to onerous or arbitrary regulations. With this latest rule, the Trump administration is undermining the rule of law and acting in direct defiance of Congress. And Congress, in passing the CARES Act, set forth a clear formula for how to distribute roughly $13 billion in aid to our schools nationwide. Of that money, about $1.5 billion is set to go to schools here in California through the Elementary and Secondary School Relief Fund. To be clear, it's not that California faces the prospect of losing all of that money. It's that the Trump administration is creating a process that could unlawfully take tens of millions of dollars away from low-income public schools and divert it to these private schools. Some of these private schools charging tuition as much as a kid that you would send off to a private university. We're talking in the realm of $20,000 or more a year per student in some cases. Unfortunately, that's about as much as the average poor working family in California might earn in an entire year. That's a lot of money for folks. And to see that kind of money taken away from our public schools to help kids of those families, it's not just sinful, it's against the law. Secretary DeVos, we know, will argue that it's about providing equitable services. But that couldn't be further from the truth. This pandemic is hurting all of our schools, but those with the fewest resources have less ways to confront the challenges. And Secretary DeVos knows that. In putting forward this rule, the U.S. Department of Education admitted that this was going to leave low-income public schools with less. And even then, the rule includes the elite private schools, where some members of the Trump administration probably send their kids. And that some of those schools have already been able to access hundreds of billions of dollars from the CARES Act Paycheck Protection Program, unlike California public schools that can't. This is going to hurt the children who are most in need, and it's going to get in the way of critical work to ensure students have food to eat. And with over $110 million allocated specifically for that purpose in California alone, that's a big hurt for a lot of working families. The bad news with this interim rule doesn't stop there. The rule also interferes with other determinations made by California about how to allocate those CARES Act funds K through 12 schools. Whether that's investments in new technology for remote learning or working to make sure our schools are safe and clean, bottom line is that our state and our school districts, and Angela could attest to this, are better positioned than Secretary DeVos in Washington, D.C. to make the decisions about how best to serve our students. And let's remember, Secretary DeVos has infamously avoided even setting foot in public schools across our country. Here are the facts. Congress clearly established that these pandemic relief funds should be proportionally provided in line with the distribution of funds from Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. That act prioritizes our neediest school districts nationwide. And many of those members of Congress who have spoken out against this harmful guidance by the Trump administration and this interim final rule that was put out by Secretary DeVos and the president have made that very clear. This rule distorts Congress's mandate by requiring that the inclusion of private schools based on their total population and not on income as directed by Title I and the CARES Act. It's not that private schools are categorically ineligible for relief. It's that Congress called for these funds to be distributed on the basis of need, as states see fit. Instead, Secretary DeVos has put forward a rule that exceeds her authority and that of the Department of Education at the federal department. 2, it undermines Congress's intent. And 3, it violates the separation of powers as established by the U.S. Constitution. Ultimately, it's a shakedown of low-income schools across the country. This interim final rule creates a false choice where school districts must include private schools on the basis of their total population or be forced to jump through unnecessary, complicated hoops to do what Congress intended, to make sure the funds get to schools that are hurting the most. Whether it's President Trump or Secretary DeVos, we won't stand by when the education of our children and the rule of law are under threat. And we know what it takes to get this kind of work done here in California. Last month, we sued the Trump administration to block their efforts to undermine critical protections under Title IX for survivors of sexual assault in our schools. We pushed back on federal efforts that threaten to create loopholes in student meal programs that would favor high-sodium foods like pizza and French fries, hurting the health of our kids. Last year, we reached an agreement with the Stockton Unified School District to put an end to discriminatory practices that harm Black and Latino students and our students with disabilities. And here in California, our office secured a historic desegregation agreement. You heard me right. 50 years since the last one, but we secured a desegregation agreement with the Sausalito Marin School District here in Northern California. At the end of the day, we're going to keep working to protect our students, and our Bureau of Children's Justice here at the Department of Justice is leading the way in today's action. And it was built for this exact purpose when I came into office. When it comes to this latest attack by the Trump administration, we're fighting back to help make sure these funds end up where they're needed. The futures of our students are at stake. With that, let me turn it over now to my friend and colleague here in the great state of California, our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurmond.
Thank you, Attorney General Becerra. Thank you for your leadership. It is an honor for me to also add my voice to your words about the matter that is before us, and in particular this lawsuit, to ensure that the will of Congress is followed, to provide support through the CARES Act for our most needy students in the state of California and in this nation. As Attorney General Becerra lays out, this is in fact an equity issue. If you think about it, we're speaking about equity in the impact that this decision from Secretary DeVos's rule would have on low-income Californians. To set the context, in California during this pandemic, our schools provide meals to students at more than 5,000 different sites in our state. For many of our students, this may be the only meal that they're able to receive. In some cases, 1, 2, or 3 meals a day. As Attorney General Becerra points out, we have a digital divide in this country that allows many of our students to be without the very tools that they need to support their educational progress. And we know that millions of our students are unable to check in to get support from teachers or from counselors to support their social emotional learning needs. And so we are proud to be in a position to have made a declaration in support of this lawsuit so that we can provide factual information on what the negative impact of this decision to focus on population of a school rather than on income, the negative and adverse impacts it will have directly on low-income students. We know that in California and in this nation, there's a long-standing tradition on following Title I, and that Title I applies to the income level of our students so that we can support them. This new ruling by Secretary DeVos moves away from that tradition and brings politics into a conversation when there should only be how do we support people during the pandemic. And so, again, we're glad to provide factual information about the impact of schools. I'm glad today to add my voice to the work of our great Attorney General Becerra and his team in leading this lawsuit and the many other states that are now part of this lawsuit. We know that this is the right thing for California students. We know that the will of our members of Congress and what they intended in the CARES Act must be followed. And we want to thank you, Attorney General, for invoking the law to make sure that that rule is followed in support of Californians and young people in need all across this country. Now I'm proud to introduce a friend and colleague who is an educator, who can provide additional context about the direct impacts that such a careless ruling can have on California students. She is a special education teacher, a specialist, and proud to say a newly elected trustee of the Alameda County Office of Education, a great educator and leader. Please welcome Angela Norman.
Thank you very much. I'm so very proud to stand here with our state attorney general as well as our superintendent of public instruction to really speak out about what's right in this fight to protect our public schools. As an education specialist, primarily a middle school special day class teacher, teaching students who are significantly below grade level, I personally know the impact that these funds can have on our students and why they're needed for our students in our schools. You know, very briefly, I'd just like to share a personal story of a student that I was fortunate enough to teach in the 6th and 7th grade. He came to me with significant hearing loss, bilateral hearing loss, significantly below grade level. And working with his deaf and hard hearing specialist, as well as the other specialists in our school, we were able to recognize that his issue was an access issue. There was nothing wrong with his cognitive development. He simply couldn't hear. And so we were able to get him a transcription service. Every day he'd log onto his Chromebook and connect via Skype with a transcriber who would literally transcribe everything that was happening in the classroom, 1st through 8th period. We did that for his 6th and 7th year. And by his 8th grade year, he was able to return to the general education classroom and graduated on the honor roll and is now going off to high school completely in a general education classroom, and he is on grade level. That one service cost $80,000 a year. That's one service for one student. This is what this impacts. These are the students that this impacts. So we need to ensure that our students are able to eat, that they have access in this day and time to remote learning tools, that they have Wi-Fi capability, and that they get the critical support that they need in order to have equitable learning access. This is about our students, and this is about our future. And I'm very proud, as I said earlier, to stand here in solidarity with you on this issue. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it back over to the Attorney General. And again, thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Angela, thank you for your words, and Superintendent Thurmond, thank you as well. We will take questions. If I can just say one quick comment in Spanish, for the sake of time, I'll just keep it to a real quick remark and just simply say, hoy anunciamos otra demanda contra la administración del presidente Trump. Esta vez es para proteger los recursos en las escuelas para nuestros niños. Desafortunadamente, el presidente ha decidido tratar de quitar dinero que debe estar destinado a nuestros niños en las escuelas públicas, a los niños a las escuelas donde tienen mucho privilegio, las escuelas en muchas veces donde solo los ricos pueden ir. Así que en este caso, cuando estamos hablando de la comida que tienen que comer, la enseñanza que tienen que recibir, o solo el servicio para saber que van a estar recibiendo enseñanza en un sitio limpio, sanitado, es importante saber que esos recursos van a llegar a nuestras escuelas. Y por eso estamos entregando esta demanda este día contra la administración del presidente Trump.